all for you. And today, oh boy, we're embarking on a truly mind-bending journey. We're exploring a concept that's echoed through human history for ages, this idea of an inverted reality, like a hidden mirror world that exists just beyond the veil of our ordinary perception.
It's a powerful idea, isn't it? Something just out of sight.
Exactly. And for centuries, you've had visionary poets, thinkers, people like William Blake, talking about cleansing the doors of perception. And then more recently, figures like Terence McKenna, the philosopher and ethnobotanist. They weren't just being poetic or using beautiful metaphors. They actually described a literal inverted reality, a profound unconscious realm they believed held the absolute key to understanding consciousness itself.
Right. And they claimed it wasn't just fantasy, it was accessible.
Totally accessible. Through dreams, deep meditation, certain altered states, they were adamant it was real. But here's where it gets really interesting for our deep dive today. What if this isn't just a poetic flight of fancy? What if it's something that you can actually describe with mathematics, something measurable in our brains, and maybe even something reflected in the fundamental structure of the cosmos itself?
That's the leap, isn't it? From subjective experience to something potentially quantifiable, even universal.
That's exactly it. So our mission today is to unpack this extraordinary idea. You hear phrases like man being dirigible or turning himself inside out. That's what we're digging into. We'll journey from precise geometric theory stuff that literally flips space inside out to the measurable neurological shifts happening in our brains during really profound, intense experiences.
And we'll connect that to a real-world, pretty daring experiment Terence McKenna himself undertook way out in the Amazon.
Yeah, and then we zoom way out to a radical theory suggesting our minds literally mirror the universe. So get ready for some potential aha moments, because this deep dive, well, it promises to shortcut you to being really well informed on the surprising intersection of consciousness, geometry, and cosmology.
It's quite a ride.
Definitely. Okay, let's start with those ancient echoes. This idea of an inverted reality or a mirror world.
Look, we said figures like Blake, McKenna, they weren't just playing with words. For them, this hidden unconscious realm, it was the absolute key. Understanding consciousness depended on understanding this.
And they saw it as concrete, palpable, something you could tap into, explore, not a fantasy, but another layer of reality.
Accessible through dreams, meditations, altered states, a literal dimension, you could almost say.
What's truly remarkable, I think, when you look across different traditions, different eras, is how consistent these descriptions are. The feeling of it, the nature of this inner reality, which really makes you wonder. Yeah, it poses that crucial question. Were they all just sharing powerful metaphors, just really compelling ways of talking about inner states?
Or were they describing something more literal, something that maybe astonishingly could even be mapped out with actual mathematics?
That consistency is the clue, isn't it? Shamans, mystics, modern psychonauts, they often seem to be pointing at the same underlying structure.
Exactly. And that sets up the puzzle we're tackling. How do we bridge these profound subjective experiences with the, let's say, rigorous language of science?
Right. So to really get our heads around this inside-out transformation, maybe we first need a clearer picture of the two states of consciousness we're contrasting. So on one hand, there's our normal, everyday waking reality. Right now, listening to this. In this state, our consciousness feels, well, localized, embodied, right here inside my head, inside my body, tethered to the senses.
And the brain operates hierarchically. Different bits do different jobs, organized in layers.
And our focus, almost entirely outward, perceiving the external world, interacting with it, objects, sounds, linear time, processing sensory input constantly.
Our mental energy is mostly about navigating the physical world, maintaining that sense of individual self separate from everything else.
Okay, so that's state one, normal waking consciousness.
Now, connect that to the bigger picture. The mirror world, this inverted reality, represents the complete opposite, the antithesis.
How so?
Well, it's characterized by a profoundly non-local consciousness, super expansive, not tied to one point in space or time.
And that brain hierarchy you mentioned.
It dissolves dramatically. Instead of specialized regions doing their own thing, the whole brain becomes this vast integrated network. Everything's interconnected.
Wow. So the focus shifts completely.
Entirely. From that outward external focus to an intensely internal generative reality. It's not just perceiving differently, it's like the source of perception flips inward.
That's the fundamental flip then, the inside-out transformation. Not just what you see, but how you see.
Exactly. A total reorientation from external-centric to internal, non-local, deeply interconnected.
Okay, so we have these two poles. Normal waking consciousness, focused out, hierarchical brain, and this inverted state, non-local, expansive consciousness, focused inward, globally connected brain. But how on earth do you get from A to B? How does that flip actually happen?
Well, this is where something really fascinating from pure mathematics comes in. Almost seems like magic, but it's precise. It's called inversion, specifically circle inversion.
Circle inversion.
It gives us a precise geometric way to literally flip reality completely inside out.
Okay, you got to explain that. How does math flip reality?
Imagine, just as a thought experiment, taking the entire universe, all of space, everything, and somehow pulling it through a single tiny circular keyhole, so that everything that was inside gets mapped outside and vice versa, but following very specific rules.
Whoa. Okay, that's mind-bending.
It is, but the key is it's not just a vague metaphor, it's a literal set of mathematical rules for turning a geometric space inside out.
So it's a concrete tool, not just an idea.
Precisely. It provides a formal language to describe a process that intuitively feels impossible. How could you turn space inside out? Well, circle inversion shows you how, mathematically.
All right. Break it down for us. How does this mathematical magic work?
Okay. First, you need a reference. You pick a circle. Any circle in your space. Let's call it the circle of inversion. Think of it like a geometric mirror.
Got it. A mirror circle.
Now, take any point in space you want to flip or invert. You draw a line from the exact center of your mirror circle, straight through that point and extending outwards.
Okay, line from center through point.
The new inverted point will be somewhere on that same line, but its position gets flipped according to a very specific rule. Points that were super close to the center of the circle, boom, they get mapped incredibly far away, pushed out towards infinity.
Close becomes far.
And conversely, points that were way, way out at the edges near infinity, they get pulled in really, really close to the center.
Far becomes close. A complete reversal relative to that circle.
Exactly. It's a precise remapping of spatial relationships.
Okay, but wouldn't that just scramble everything? If you flip inside to outside like that, doesn't it become total chaos? How could that preserve any meaning or structure?
That is the crucial question, and the answer is the most powerful part. No, it's not just chaotic scrambling. While it absolutely flips inside to outside, and yeah, it can do weird things like turn circles into infinite straight lines under certain conditions, the critical aspect is that it's what mathematicians call a conformal map.
Conformal map. Okay, what does that mean for us?
It means it perfectly preserves angles at every point.
Angles. Why does preserving angles matter so much?
Because preserving angles means preserving the local structure, the fundamental relationships between points right next to each other. It means preserving information.
So even though the whole thing gets turned inside out globally?
The local details, the way things connect infinitesimally, stays intact. Think about the shapes of coastlines on a map, even if you distort the map hugely. The angles at which roads meet in a city might be preserved.
So the underlying identity, the core pattern, survives the transformation.
Exactly. It allows for radical change without losing the essential information, the identity.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about applying this to consciousness, that ability to transform radically while preserving identity is absolutely paramount.
Okay, wow. So we have this cool geometry trick, circle inversion, turns things inside out, preserves information by keeping angles the same. But what on earth does this have to do with William Blake's visions or Terence McKenna's trips or our own brains? That seems like a huge leap.
It does seem like a leap, but this is where some researchers are making a really bold connection. They're proposing that circle inversion isn't just a clever analogy for these shifts in consciousness. They think it might be a direct, non-metaphorical mathematical model for what's physically happening in our brains during these profound states.
You mean like the actual process in the neurons follows this geometric pattern?
That's the provocative idea. That consciousness itself might be fundamentally structured as a kind of geometric matrix, a dynamic system that can actually undergo these precise mathematical transformations.
A geometric matrix. Okay. How does that connect to other ideas about consciousness?
Well, it fits surprisingly well with frameworks like the PSUMO theory, the primordial quantum superfluid substrate idea. PSUMO views consciousness not as a fixed thing, but as a liquid dynamic pattern, like a complex information wave moving within this universal superfluid.
So if consciousness is this fluid, wave-like pattern.
Then a geometric model like circle inversion provides a perfect framework for understanding how it could undergo such radical transformations, like flipping from external perception to internal generation, while still maintaining coherence, still being you.
It gives a structure to the process.
Exactly. It suggests consciousness isn't just a side effect of brain activity, but an active, geometrically defined process itself.
Okay, let's get concrete. Can we see this kind of inversion happening in the brain?
Well, consider the DMT state. That's often cited as a prime example. Normally, like we said, our brain is hierarchical. It uses backward traveling brainwaves.
Right, the ones that compare sensory input to predictions.
Yeah,
Focused outward.
exactly. But what happens on DMT, according to brain imaging studies, that hierarchy melts away. The brain becomes globally connected, working as one integrated network. And get this.
What?
The dominant brainwaves literally reverse direction. They become primarily forward-traveling waves.
Forward traveling, meaning?
Meaning they seem to be generating information from within, propagating outwards internally, rather than processing information coming inwards from the senses, focused on an internal generative world.
Whoa, so it's a complete, measurable inversion of the information flow.
Precisely. A total reorientation of the brain's activity from primarily receptive to primarily generative.
That's incredible. Is there a term for that?
Yeah, scientists actually call this shift antenna retuning.
Antenna retuning. I like that.
It's a perfect analogy, right? Your brain is like an antenna, normally tuned to the external world channel, processing sensory data.
Listening to the outside broadcast.
But then, suddenly, dramatically, it retunes itself to a completely different frequency, the internal generative reality channel.
And the geometry of that retuning.
According to the research we're looking at, aligns remarkably well with circle inversion. It provides a mathematical description for how that neurological inside-out flip happens.
So it's not just speculation. There's a measurable physiological change that matches the math.
That's the compelling argument being made. It connects the abstract geometry directly to brain function.
Okay, let's go even deeper then. How does this happen at a biological level? What's the mechanism behind these huge shifts? PSUMO mentions quantum biology.
Right. This gets into some really cutting-edge and admittedly still developing areas, but the idea is to find the physical structures and processes that could support this kind of dynamic geometric consciousness. We're talking about things like intricate biophoton networks.
Biophotons.
Yeah.
Like light particles inside us.
Exactly. Tiny emissions of light from cells. The idea is they might form a communication network, carrying information, coordinating activity at a quantum level. A light-based network in the brain.
Wow. And microtubules.
Yeah, microtubule quantum coherence. Microtubules are tiny protein structures inside neurons, part of the cell's skeleton. Some theories, like the ORCH or R theory, propose they might maintain quantum states, acting like quantum bits or processors for consciousness.
So actual quantum computation happening inside brain cells.
That's the hypothesis. And it's supported by some experimental findings, like observations of superradiance and tryptophan networks, molecules emitting light together in a highly synchronized way. It all points towards a living, dynamic, potentially quantum-level geometric matrix for consciousness.
Okay, and you mentioned entanglement.
Yes, this is really fascinating. The discovery, or proposed discovery, of quantum entanglement in myelin sheets.
Myelin. That's the insulation around nerves, right? Speeds up signals.
Correct. But if there's entanglement happening within or between these myelin sheaths, that suggests a physical basis for non-local effects in the brain.
Meaning?
Meaning, different parts of the brain could be connected, sharing information instantaneously in a way that classical electrical signaling can't explain.
Ah, so that could be the mechanism for that global connectivity we see in the inverted state.
Exactly. It offers a compelling way to understand how the brain can act as a unified whole, overcoming the limitations of purely local signaling.
And this connects even to end-of-life experiences.
Potentially, yes. Some research highlights a massive, coherent burst of biophotons light happening around the time of death. This is sometimes proposed as the quantum carrier of consciousness decoupling from the body, and it often occurs alongside huge surges in gamma waves.
Gamma waves.
Yeah.
Aren't those linked to high-level conscious perception, like insight or the life review in near-death experiences?
Precisely. So you see this correlation between peak conscious experience, these specific brainwaves, and these bursts of quantum phenomena like biophotons. It all suggests consciousness might have this deep quantum signature, fundamental to its existence and transformation.
Okay, so the brain physically reconfigures, maybe using quantum processes, flipping its focus inward based on something like circle inversion geometry. What does that actually feel like? What's the subjective experience of this inverted reality?
The sources describe it vividly. It's often framed as a state where our eyes are now looking inward at our constructed home of our own soul.
The home of our own soul.
It's a shift to an intensely internal generative reality, not just seeing things differently, but feeling like you're perceiving the very source of your being, your inner psychic landscape.
And the visuals. We can describe them as, well, almost cartoonish sometimes.
Yeah, the descriptions can be surreal, not like a clear photograph, but maybe more like a vibrant oil painting come to life. Or as you said, potentially like a three-dimensional cartoon, maybe a mix of The Simpsons and Looney Tunes, but with the tactile, detailed quality of something like Wallace and Gromit's stop-motion animation.
That's such a specific and strange combination.
It points to a reality constructed with different rules, different aesthetics, and often there's this sense of altered time.
Like things slowing down.
Exactly. Everything seems to be in semi-slow motion. It's unclear if reality itself slows or if your perception speeds up, allowing you to see the moments unfold more granularly.
And this home of the soul, does that connect to psychological ideas?
Absolutely. It resonates strongly with Jungian psychology. Jung saw the self as this dynamic, evolving process, an information wave, if you like. So perceiving the home of your soul could be seen as the individual psyche directly encountering its deeper archetypal patterns within that collective unconscious, which PSU Moat would link to the universal superfluid itself.
Exploring your own deepest inner landscape, where the personal meets the universal.
Precisely. And the boundaries just blur.
Now, beyond the visuals and the time distortion, there's the sensation aspect. The reports often mention, well, orgasmic feelings.
Yes, that's a consistent and striking feature, and there's a neurochemical basis for it. Brain activation patterns during these intense states show significant overlap with patterns seen during sexual arousal and orgasm.
Really? Like what?
We're talking intense activation of the ventral tegmental area, VTA, leading to a massive dopamine release from the nucleus accumbens. That's the core of the brain's pleasure and reward circuit.
The pleasure center going into overdrive.
Exactly. Plus, you get cascades of other neurochemicals, oxytocin, prolactin, endorphins flooding the system. These are all associated with bonding, well-being, and profound pleasure or euphoria.
So it's not just a metaphor for feeling good, it's a full-blown neurochemical event.
Absolutely. And the descriptions emphasize that these aren't mild pleasures. They're often reported as full-body pleasure sensations extending far beyond typical sexual response.
Far beyond. How is that described?
People talk about feeling drenched in this sensation, almost as if that peak physical pleasure of climax isn't localized, but diffused throughout the entire body, resonating everywhere.
Wow.
Some accounts even mention a literal physical phenomenon, like your pores are oozing out sweat, but it's not sweat.
Not sweat. What is it then?
Well, it's described as this viscous substance, and there's speculation, though obviously it's just speculation, that if you could collect it, maybe it would resemble the mythical soma from the Vedas, the junk of the gods, or perhaps Hokie, the legendary magic spit or sweat of Amazonian shamans.
A physical manifestation of this altered state.
That's the idea. As if instead of sweat, your body exudes this substance, and the feeling associated with it is described as akin to the sensation of sex itself, but felt over the entire surface of the skin.
Like being drenched in that feeling.
Exactly, like that phrase, the love of God washes over you, but experienced as an intense, physical, orgasmic vibration. Some describe it like each goosebump we have is ejaculating at once for several minutes. A total, full-body, ecstatic release.
That's incredibly intense. It really speaks to the all-encompassing nature of these internal experiences.
It does, a profound connection between consciousness, biology, and pleasure.
And this isn't just a modern phenomenon tied to specific substances, right?
Yeah.
This turning inside out has older roots.
Oh, absolutely. Deep roots across cultures. Look at Siberian shamanic traditions. Their initiation rituals often involve radical consciousness shifts. Shamans describe experiences like seeing a skeleton-like overlay on reality or even feeling dismembered and then put back together.
A symbolic death and rebirth.
Exactly. It represents a fundamental consciousness inversion. The ordinary identity is dismantled, reconstructed, allowing access to non-ordinary realities, communication with spirits, and so on.
And this is widespread.
Incredibly so. Anthropological research, like Winckelmann's analysis of 47 societies, documents these shamanic soul flight experiences consistently. Consciousness appears to invert its focus from the everyday world, which they often see as less real, towards the real world of spirits and deeper energies.
Transcending the self, journeying inward.
And these kinds of journey trance states, found in something like 90% of studied world cultures, it's practically a human universal.
Wow. Any other specific examples?
The Mazatec shamanic traditions in Mexico, especially with their psilocybin mushroom ceremonies, offer detailed parallels. Shamans talk about personifying and communicating with sacred entities, traversing between different realms in their three-tiered cosmologies. It's a complete inversion of ordinary boundaries.
And encounters with entities seem common too. McKenna's elves.
Yes, that's another recurring theme. These beings, sometimes described as self-transforming balls of light made of language. McKenna called them elves. They remind many people of the descriptions of cherubim and seraphim, like in Ezekiel's vision, those round wheels made of light, full of eyes round about.
Wheels full of eyes. Beings made of language and light.
And McKenna and others report these beings seem incredibly excited, almost ecstatic, to see the visitor, like they're welcoming you.
Welcoming. Why?
The interpretation McKenna offered was that from their perspective in that dimension, perhaps they think you've died and are arriving permanently in the afterlife.
So they're happy because they think you're staying.
That was his speculation, that they seem to worship and love the visitor because they assume it's a permanent transition.
And then when the experience ends.
When the DMT wears off or the trance state finishes and the person leaves that dimension and returns to ordinary reality, McKenna said the elves seem to get sad, disappointed, and then they just wait for the next visitor to arrive.
That adds such a strange, poignant layer to it.
It really does. It suggests a reality with its own inhabitants, its own perspectives, its own emotional responses.
Okay, let's bring this back to McKenna himself. His Amazon trip in 1971, La Chorrera. This wasn't just about having an experience, was it? It was an experiment.
Very much so. He went with his brother Dennis and others, and their goal was incredibly ambitious, maybe even audacious. They wanted to, as they put it, short-circuit chronology, to force the issue of accessing this other dimension, this inverted reality.
Force the issue. How? What does that even mean?
It means they weren't content to just wait for spontaneous mystical experiences or rely solely on traditional shamanic methods. They wanted to see if they could engineer a breakthrough. Intentionally induce this state of man being dirigible, turning inside out.
A conscious attempt to manipulate access to this other reality.
Exactly. It ties into McKenna's broader novelty theory, the idea that the universe strives towards increasing complexity and novelty. He saw the universe, maybe the superfluid, as constantly forming new, intricate patterns. Their experiment was an attempt to consciously interact with, maybe even accelerate those dynamics.
An attempt to consciously influence the unfolding of reality itself.
In a way, yes, an intellectual and existential gamble. And significantly, Dennis McKenna, his brother, is reported to have actually experienced that profound turning inside out there at La Chorrera.
He felt his own mind reverse.
He described it that way, yes. The matrix of his unconscious being used to flip his perception inward. It really underscores how personal and transformative this can be.
Okay, so what was the experiment itself? What did they actually do at La Chorrera?
They focused on harmine and harmaline. These are compounds from the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, the basis of ayahuasca.
Right, the ayahuasca vine.
Their idea was pretty wild. They planned to use sand-specific frequencies to try and charge the molecular structure of these harmine molecules while they were in the body.
Charge molecules with sound inside someone.
Yeah. The hope was that these charged molecules would then bind preferentially to specific biological structures. Their first, very speculative target was DNA.
Binding psychoactive molecules to DNA using sound.
Like I said, wild. They considered other possibilities later. McKenna himself called it very loose science or very tight magic. He knew it was out there.
Loose science or tight magic.
Yeah.
That sums it up well.
But it shows their intense curiosity, right? They were hunting for a physical mechanism. How could consciousness be transformed so radically?
And even thinking about DNA, it touches on that idea of fundamental biological blueprints being involved.
Exactly. And now, with epigenetics, we see how experiences can leave marks on how our DNA is expressed. So while their method was unconventional, the intuition wasn't entirely off base. Maybe just ahead of its time, or approaching it from a very different angle.
Okay, so they did this experiment. What did Terrence report experiencing? You mentioned the dialogue.
Yes, that's one of the most striking parts of his accounts. He described a literal dialogue with the overmind or with these entities. He said, and I'm quoting him, "It speaks to you, you speak to it, it says things." It wasn't just an internal monologue.
He felt it was conversing with something separate.
Definitely. He even quoted one entity saying, "I am old, 50 times older than thought in your species, and I came from the stars." And he
Whoa.
talked about arguing with it, trying to get it to cough up information. It was an active, intelligent exchange in his experience.
And the visuals weren't just patterns.
No, far from it. He described seeing places, jungles, cities, machines, books, architectonic form of incredible complexity, highly structured, intricate stuff.
Not random noise.
He stressed it was the most highly ordered demonstration geometry he'd ever seen, and again, those self-transforming balls of light made of language, how everything seemed to resolve into linguistic syntax, as if thought, language, and vision were all merging.
Beings made of language. It keeps coming back to that, like the logos, the ordering principle becoming visible.
That's very much the interpretation. McKenna felt the seeing wasn't just optical, it was a resonance of his entire being, a deep recognition. He described it as the logos going from a thing heard to a thing seen without ever crossing through a quantized transition point, a direct holistic grasp of meaning.
And these entities, the elves, the cherubim, they recognized him, welcomed him.
That was his distinct impression. Immense joy, excitement, almost worship from these beings made of light and language and eyes, because they thought he was arriving for good.
And then the sadness when he left. It's an incredible, almost mythic narrative he experienced.
Absolutely. It pushes the boundaries of what we consider possible experience.
Okay, so we've gone from geometry to brain science to these intense entity-filled experiences. Now let's zoom out again to the cosmos, the PSUOT framework.
Right. This takes that pattern of inversion and asks, could it be fundamental to the universe itself? PSUMO, the primordial quantum superfluid substrate theory, starts with a radical premise.
Which is?
That the universe, at its base, isn't empty space with particles in it. It is a single substance, a primordial quantum superfluid substrate, the PSS.
So space-time itself is this fluid.
Exactly. Not just in space-time, it is space-time. And its dynamics, the way the superfluid flows and behaves, generate everything we observe, matter, energy, physical laws, they all emerge from this substrate.
Okay, that's a huge idea. How does that help explain things?
Well, it offers potentially elegant solutions to some huge cosmic mysteries. For instance, PSUMO identifies the PSS itself as dark matter.
So dark matter isn't some missing particle, it's just the substrate itself.
That's the proposal. No need to hunt for a new particle.
Yeah.
And dark energy, the force accelerating the universe's expansion.
What about that?
In PSUMT, that's explained as an emergent cosmic pressure within the superfluid, an inherent property of its dynamics.
So expansion is just the fluid naturally pushing outwards.
Essentially, yes. And that dynamic pressure also helps explain why time flows in one direction, the arrow of time.
It grounds time's direction in the fluid's behavior.
Right, and light electromagnetism plays a key role too. It's seen as the physical catalyst, the verb of creation.
The verb of creation.
Meaning it's what allows an information wave, a pattern of potential within the superfluid, to lock in, to become stable and observable, to turn potential into actual reality.
Photons as the architects of manifestation.
In a sense, yes. As gauge bosons, they mediate the fundamental forces and carry information, making stable structures possible.
Okay, so the universe is this dynamic superfluid. Where does the inversion come in?
Here's where the pattern snaps into place, and it's really quite astonishing. The exact same geometric transformation circle inversion that seems to model the brain's consciousness flip. PSUMO proposes, it also describes the fundamental dynamics of this cosmic superfluid.
Wait, the same geometry? For brains in the cosmos?
That's the core insight. In this view, the inward collapse of matter-gravity pulling things together to form stars, galaxies, black holes, and the outward expansion of the cosmic void, the accelerating expansion driven by that cosmic pressure, are not two separate forces fighting each other.
What?
Two sides of the same coin. One single fundamental inside-out geometric transformation described by circle inversion. Collapse is inversion towards the center. Expansion is inversion away from the center.
Wow. So the pattern in our minds.
Seems to be, according to this theory, a perfect mirror of the pattern of the cosmos.
A fundamental unity of principles. From mind to matter to the universe itself.
That's the implication, a scale-invariant geometric principle underlying reality.
Let's just trace that again because it's huge. We started with the mystery of the mirror world. Found a mathematical key, circle inversion. Used that key to model a measurable flip in brain activity consciousness turning inward.
saw how intense experiences, maybe like McKenna's, embody that flip with unique sensory details and entity encounters.
And now we see that very same geometric flip might be fundamental to the universe's own structure and expansion.
And crucially, because circle inversion is conformal, it preserves information. Your sense of you, your core identity pattern, can survive that radical transformation.
So the mirror world isn't a place you go to.
It's more like a geometric perspective you can take, a potential state inherent in the structure of consciousness itself, a structure that mirrors the cosmos.
That really is the big takeaway then. Consciousness isn't just some random fluke happening in the universe.
It seems to be structured like the universe, a dynamic geometric matrix built on the same principles, capable of flipping its own perspective from outside in to inside out.
Our minds aren't just passengers, they're active participants, mirroring the universe's deepest operations.
Exactly. Which leads to how we might actually shape reality.
Right. This unified view implies consciousness isn't passive, the idea of observer shaping.
Yes. It suggests we actively compute and shape the reality we perceive. It's not just coming in through the senses unfiltered.
You mentioned Edwin Land's Retinex theory before.
A great example. The eye-brain system doesn't just register photons. It performs complex calculations, comparing light across the scene to construct our stable perception of color and brightness.
Perception as an active computation.
Exactly. So extending that, maybe our internal information waves, our consciousness are constantly interacting with that cosmic superfluid, the PSS, and in doing so, we're actually co-creating the reality we experience, contributing to its manifestation.
Blurring the line between observer and observed, internal and external.
Fundamentally, giving consciousness a much more active role.
Okay, but if consciousness is these dynamic waves, how do they persist? How do we have memory, identity? You mentioned morphic resonance.
Right. Morphic resonance, Rupert Sheldrake's idea. It's often seen as this vague concept of cosmic memory, like the universe having habits, past patterns making it easier for future patterns to form.
A universal memory field, almost.
Kind of. But what's fascinating now is seeing how this idea might be grounded in concrete biology, particularly epigenetics.
Epigenetics again. How does that connect?
Well, think about how memory works biologically. A significant experience, especially emotional or traumatic, triggers intense neurochemical cascades. These cascades initiate epigenetic changes, things like DNA methylation in the specific neural circuits involved in that memory.
So the experience chemically tags the DNA in those brain cells.
Precisely. These epigenetic markers act like permanent, stable blueprints for that memory pattern. So when new cells are formed or when that circuit is activated again, the cell machinery reads that modified DNA and it perfectly replicates the structure and function associated with the memory.
It physically remembers the pattern through DNA modifications.
Exactly. It's a robust physical mechanism for how experience gets imprinted, remembered, and re-expressed. It even explains how trauma patterns can potentially be passed down epigenetically. It's biological morphic resonance in a way.
A tangible mechanism for patterns persisting. Wow.
But it connects the large-scale idea to the microscale biology.
And how does all this connect to psychology? Jung's collective unconscious.
The resonance is striking. Jung described the collective unconscious as this omnipresent, unchanging, and everywhere identical substrate of the psyche.
That sounds a lot like the description of the PSS, the universal superfluid.
Doesn't it? In this integrated view, the collective unconscious could be seen as the psychic or informational aspect of the PSS.
And Jungian archetypes, those universal patterns.
They could be understood as persistent formative wave patterns within that collective substrate. Universal blueprints for human experience emerging from the fabric of reality itself.
Mind-blowing. And what about shaping our personal reality? Psycho-cybernetics.
Right. Maxwell Maltz's work, he described the brain and nervous system as an automatic success mechanism, a goal-striving servo mechanism.
Directed by our conscious mind, our self-image.
Exactly. And his key insight, so relevant here, was that your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one that is vividly imagined.
That's huge.
It means our self-image, our beliefs, our focused imagination, they are constantly hallucinating or generating our subjective reality.
And our body responds as if it's real.
Precisely. It blurs the line completely between real and imagined within our personal experience. It highlights the incredible power of our inner world to actively construct the reality we inhabit, moment by moment.
What an incredible journey we've been on. Seriously. From ancient mystics talking about mirror worlds
Right.
to the nitty-gritty math of circle inversion. seeing that geometry possibly reflected in brainwave reversals during altered states.
Connecting it to McKenna's wild Amazon experiment, trying to deliberately trigger that inside-out flip.
And then zooming all the way out to see that same geometric pattern potentially underpinning the entire cosmos in the PSUOT framework.
Yeah, when you lay it all out, it really does seem like this idea of turning ourselves inside out is so much more than a metaphor. It points towards this deep, maybe even measurable connection between our individual consciousness and the fabric of universal reality.
Our minds aren't just along for the ride.
Not at all. They seem to be these active, dynamic geometric matrices, structured on the same principles as the cosmos itself, and capable of these radical shifts in perspective flips that preserve who we are, but open up entirely new ways of experiencing reality.
Exploring the inner universe, which mirrors the outer one. So we've talked a lot about how a temporary geometric flip in the brain can give us these amazing glimpses, a look into the mirror world, the home of our own soul.
Those moments of profound insight or connection.
Right. But that leaves us with a really provocative thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over or explore on your own.
We've seen what happens when those doors of perception are cleansed for a moment, opened temporarily.
But what would a permanent transformation mean? What happens if those doors aren't just cracked open briefly, but thrown wide open for good?
Allowing a continuous, integrated experience of this inverted reality, this inner cosmos.
Yeah. What would that state of being be like?
It's a question that really digs into the ultimate nature of our minds, our potential, and maybe what lies beyond our current understanding of existence itself.